AOC was exposed. I'm going to be honest. I have been a longtime supporter of AOC. Some would even call me a shill. And I got some new information recently that has changed my entire perspective. AOC co-owned a restaurant. And the supporting evidence for that co-ownership is that she worked there when it started. Now, as we all know, the way things work is if you are an employee as something starts, that means you're a co-owner. Because there would never be a situation where an owner hires an employee as the restaurant opens. That would never happen. We all know that every single business that's ever existed in the entirety of the planet, in the history of the world, right? Every single person that was there at the start has equal ownership. Because we live in a democracy, right? Obviously. So, her working, right, at Flat's Fix, a tacos and craft cocktail spot in Manhattan, right? Her working there as it launched means she has equity in the company. Duh. We all know that. That's obvious. So Jackson Hinkle, journalist, and honestly one of the smartest human beings who's ever lived, brings the scoop to us, and let's read. AOC co-owned the restaurant she used to bartend at, and she worked on foreign affairs issues for Senator Ted Kennedy before running for Congress. Justice Dem strategist told AOC not to talk about either occupation during her campaign and to instead claim she was, quote, just a bartender. Now, another thing that we know is that when you run for office, or honestly, when you do anything, right, obviously you have to, at all times, give your complete autobiography at every campaign event. We know that that's true. There's no such thing as selecting details and focusing on certain details because that would make people more able to get your message. It would make your message quicker, more consistent, and more stable. That's not true. Everyone knows that every single time someone speaks at any event, they have to, by default, give their entire complete autobiography every single time. We know that. That's fact. So the idea that AOC was hiding these details, it had nothing to do with the fact that they were trying to focus on things that could help win an election that was very, very difficult to win. Nothing to do with that whatsoever. It was because they were hiding those things, keeping it in the dark. They didn't want people to know that she worked as a fucking aide for a senator for like 6 months. That was a secret. That was secret information. They didn't want people to know that she worked at a restaurant since it opened and not, at another random point in its lifespan, right? Again, why didn't AOC give her entire autobiography as well as the autobiography of her parents and both of her grandparents, right? Why didn't she do that at every campaign event? Why didn't she go to that debate with Joe Crowley and talk about, her first memories as a child? Why? Because she was hiding something. Obvious. Right? Obvious. Now, again, this is some very hard-hitting journalism. And so we had some good classic debunkery from Matt Binder. And so let's read this. The Taco Bell that AOC worked at is owned by 3 people who run a company called Theme Food Inc. They also opened the Union Square coffee shop in 1990 when AOC was 1 year old, and Live Bait, which opened in 1987, 2 years before AOC was born. So obviously, AOC is a time traveler. That's the only explanation. It's obviously not the case that Jackson Hinkle got things wrong, misinterpreted information, or just listened to someone who had a personal vendetta against AOC and wanted to lie about them, and then they were just a stenographer for that person's personal vendetta. That's obviously not the case. The only possible explanation for this is that AOC is a time traveler. That's it. That's literally the... So let's go on. As someone who has lived in NYC my entire life, it's quite well known that the owners of Union Square Coffee Shop, which closed in 2018, RIP, also own the taco bar that AOC worked at. It's right around the corner in the same building, too. That only makes the conspiracy even more difficult to debunk. Right? So they had the one building, and they had 2 restaurants and businesses in that building. What was in the 3rd room in the back? Is that where the time machine was kept? They have this whole building. They're operating so many fronts. Obviously, the time machine was in the back of the building. Obviously. There's no other option. Here's the liquor license filing info for the Taco Bar Flats Fix, which AOC worked at. The corporation which owns it was founded in 1986. AOC wasn't even born yet. Again, Matt Binder, Democratic Party hack, Matt Binder, actually thinks that this debunks the theory that AOC was a time traveler. And to me, that's hilarious. Jackson and Hinkle laid it out very clearly. And the fact that these companies started before she was even born makes it more obvious that she's hiding something. So, this is some really deep dirt that's being dug up. And, again, this changes everything. It really does change everything. And so, I don't even know what to do. I have no idea. This changes my entire worldview. Time travelers not only are real, but they exist, and they're on Twitter. Can you believe it? Wow.